no. What we do know is at least one Republican senator is publicly not yet totally sold on Hegseth, Iowa's Joni Ernst. Senator Ernst, who is the Senate's first female combat veteran and an advocate for survivors of sexual assault in the military, notably declined to voice her support for Hegseth this morning, even on Fox.
Will you support his nomination?
Well, I did have a very long, lengthy discussion with Pete yesterday, and I do appreciate his service to the nation. I also am a combat veteran. So we talked about a number of those issues, and we will continue with the vetting process. I think that that is incredibly important. So again, all I'm saying is we had a very frank and productive discussion, and I know that we will continue to have conversation in the upcoming months.
Okay, it doesn't sound on your answer that you've gotten to a yes. If I'm wrong about that, correct me. And if that is the case, it sounds to me as if the hearing will be critical for his nomination. Am I right about that?
I think you are right.
And Senator Ernst is not alone. NBC News is reporting that as many as 6 Republicans are currently not comfortable supporting Hegseth's bid to lead the Pentagon, according to 3 Republican sources with direct knowledge of his nomination process. Still, Hegseth is trying his best to pressure skeptical senators, telling some that he will just stop drinking if he's confirmed, and even reportedly having his mom work the phones on his behalf, which isn't exactly reassuring, especially when you're talking about an extremely high-stakes job that oversees millions of service members and federal employees, as well as a budget of hundreds of billions of dollars. But if the sexual assault allegation and reports of excessive drinking aren't troubling enough, what's equally concerning is what he may want to do if he actually gets the job. A new column from the New York Times dives into Hegseth's latest book, The War on Warriors, noting that a lot of what he writes sure sounds like a lot like the comments Trump made on the campaign trail about going after the enemy within. Statements like, America today is in a cold civil war. Our soul is under attack by a confederacy of radicals. And while his generation was fighting wars abroad, Hegseth writes, we allowed America's domestic enemies at home to gobble up cultural, political, and spiritual territory. And weirdly enough, this is not the first time Hegseth has invoked civil war in a book. In his 2020 book titled American Crusade, he wrote that in the event of a Democratic election victory, there would be a national divorce in which the military and police will be forced to make a choice. And yes, there will be some form of civil war. Joining me now is Sahil Kapoor, NBC News senior national political reporter, Tom Nichols, staff writer for The Atlantic, and Molly Jong-Fast, MSNBC contributor and Vanity Fair special correspondent. Sahil, I want to let you give us sort of the temperature among the Republican caucus. But first, I just want to give you a couple more pieces of data here from Politico, a quote from a Republican senator on Joni Ernst's vote. The threats are already on the table. Quote, if Joni Ernst votes no, she's going to have a hard time with her reelection campaign, said one GOP senator, noting that during any floor vote, Trump will be taking names. Now, I want you to listen to Senator Richard Blumenthal, himself a veteran, on opposition to Hegseth.
I've talked to 5 to 10 Republicans who have said to me they're just waiting for the right moment to say no to Pete Hegseth, and for very good reasons.
Why do you think so few Republicans, none by my count, have been willing to come out and say they will definitively not support this nominee?
Nobody wants to defy Donald Trump if you're a Republican.
How much of all of that are you seeing in your reporting, Sahil?
Well, Joy, I think this nomination is still very much up in the air. Pete Hegseth knows he's hit turbulence. That's why he's been out here on Capitol Hill all week, having a bunch of meetings with senators, some of whom are supportive of him, some of whom have said positive things about him after the meeting, and others like Joni Ernst, who have not committed to supporting him and sound quite skeptical, to be honest. She is going to be a key person to watch for a variety of reasons, not only because she's on the committee who, that's going to be overseeing his nomination, nomination. She is a combat veteran herself. Now, notice she just casually dropped that on Fox News. There might be a reason for that, which is that Pete Hegseth has said in the past that he doesn't believe women should serve in combat. That does not sit well with Joni Ernst, and I don't think it'll sit well with a number of the other female Republican senators as well. So he's got to answer for some of those ideological statements that he's made, but he's also got to answer for what has been quite a few allegations about him that go to his character. It really is a lot for Republican senators to accept and to look past. But Pete Hegseth is playing the card that he's not leaving until Donald Trump makes him go, which is an interesting departure from the way Matt Gaetz handled his AG nomination. Gaetz read the writing on the wall and didn't have to be pushed by Donald Trump. He just decided to drop out. Hegseth has indicated that he's going to keep at it until Donald Trump asks him to go. And he also said he's a different man today. Quote, "I'm a different man than I was years ago." He said it's a redemption story, playing that card, Joy.
How has the addition of his mom to the lobbying campaign played on Capitol Hill? It did evoke a great deal of mockery of Pete Hegseth, that he's sending his mom in to try to do cleanup for him, given the email she wrote in 2018 about his poor character in her view then. How has the mom played on Capitol Hill?
Well, for Pete Hegseth's strongest Republican supporters, it's valuable testimony. It's, a character witness that they can point to and say, well, she's apologized for that note, she's retracted it, she says he's a different person. For those who want to get to yes on Pete Hegseth, that is not going to be a problem for them. But for the skeptics, I think it's the cascade of allegations, Joy. It's the allegations of financial mismanagement at the veterans groups, the sexual assault allegation, which he denies, the treatment of women question, which his mom initially put down in that letter that she has since retracted. It's a lot for senators to consider. And if he does make it to a confirmation hearing next month, if he plows through this, all of this turbulence as he insists he will, that will be a very uncomfortable confirmation hearing for Pete Hegseth, in part because Joni Ernst will be sitting there, but also sitting across from him will be Tammy Duckworth, a woman who lost both her legs in combat fighting for the United States. I don't suspect that's going to be a comfortable exchange for Pete Hegseth. So there's still a long way to go, including, by the way, Joy, a background check, an FBI background check.
Very interesting that Chris Wray, who's still the FBI director, he still has 3 more years, and I know Donald Trump wants to replace him with Kash Patel, but that's a whole other segment. I want to go to you real quick, Tom Nichols, because I do know that you have been instructing members of our great military. And so there are a lot of buckets here. I think that we've really leaned into the sexual assault stories, the mistreatment of women. But some of the other stuff, I think, has gotten not enough attention. I wanted to read you what The Guardian wrote about Hegseth's book, American Crusade, because I remember that George W. Bush actually had crusade in the name of the operation we did in the Middle East and changed it because of the toxicity of that term in the world. This is what The Guardian writes. Among the consequences, should Biden win, he predicted, there would be that America will decline and die. A national divorce will ensue. Outnumbered freedom lovers will fight back. Continuing, Hegseth writes, the military and police, both bastions of freedom-loving patriots, will be forced to make a choice. It will not be good. Yes, there will be some sort of civil war. Elsewhere in American Crusade, he writes, the hour is late for America. Beyond political success, her fate relies on exorcising the leftist specter dominating education, religion, and culture, a 360-degree holy war for the righteous crusade of human freedom. How would that sit as for a leader of the Pentagon, the leader of the American military, other than the commander-in-chief, to hold those views?
Well, first of all, it's important to point out that even if Pete Hegseth had lived an exemplary life, his lack of experience and these completely fringe ideas would be an instant disqualification. I think part of the problem is that Donald Trump and the people around him assume that everybody in the military thinks this way. That there's this kind of core of Spartans just waiting to be called forth, at the behest of, one brave major who feels that he was done dirt some years ago. And it's nonsense. I mean, I've known, and as you say, taught hundreds and hundreds of military officers, most of them more senior than Pete Hegseth. And I think most of them would find these views appalling, un-American, dangerous. They are not there to be culture warriors on behalf of some holy, righteous crusade. They are there to serve and defend first and foremost, defend the Constitution of the United States. That is their oath, and to defend the United States of America, to obey the lawful orders of the president and other officers. The U.S. military does not exist to be the vessel of some kind of, great awakening of American militarism, and I think it's really important to point out one other thing. The Secretary of Defense job is not some opportunity for self-actualization and redemption. It's a dead serious job that includes running a gigantic bureaucracy, the care and the health and well-being of 3 million people, and potentially being in the room when nuclear weapons are being discussed. So, the idea that this is some sort of redemption tour and that he should be Secretary of Defense to prove that he's overcome his demons. And I have sympathy for that, by the way. He's not the only guy who ever went through a bad divorce and did a lot of drinking. I'm familiar with that story myself. But the idea that you have a right to be Secretary of Defense because that's your origin story is nonsense, and it's dangerous nonsense.
It is, and we didn't even get into the fact of alleged mismanagement of money, Molly. I mean, that, I think, has also not gotten enough attention. Concerned Veterans of America often spent more than it took in. It was $37,000 in debt by 2016. His other job, Vets for Freedom, revenues rose sharply under his leadership, reaching $8.7 million, but spending rose even faster. The group fell into debt, then fizzled. So you're managing a giant budget, and he doesn't seem to have a history of doing that well. But I want to get to this third piece, which is the drinking part. I want to play you what he himself said about self-medicating after serving in Iraq.
I went home on leave and there wasn't a single moment, especially at night, where I didn't replay every single aspect of the firefight and every single decision that I made. I'd look around at 10 o'clock and be like, what am I going to do today? How would I drink some beers? How would I go have lunch and have some beers? How would I meet my 1 or 2 buddies and have some beers? And one beers leads to many, leads to self-medication, leads to I've earned this. Like, don't tell me I can't.
This idea that he's going to redeem himself from that by having this job and managing 3 million people. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, so my own experience is that I got sober when I was 19, and I've been sober for 27 years. And for me, someone who came from a family with alcoholism and who, alcoholism in my mind was a hereditary disease. But a lot of people do end up sort of becoming alcoholics after traumatic incidents, especially, the veterans have a real problem with alcoholism, self-medicating. I mean, exactly what he described, self-medicating to treat a trauma. Yeah. And it's really common. And it's not, it's ironic. First of all, if it were as simple as I'm not going to drink because my life is stressful. He said, I'll just stop drinking. Yeah, we would have many sober people and it would be great. Right. But it tends to be very hard to get sober. And the other thing I would say is that this is a group that wants to cut VA services, right? Yes. I mean, this party. And we have a lot of veterans in this country who struggle with alcoholism and addiction, who need treatment and who need treatment plans and who need, counseling and need to get this help. And we have real addiction problems in this country. I mean, fentanyl, Republicans love to talk about fentanyl. Yeah. Like, it's a real problem. And so there's an opportunity here to have a great conversation about addiction and treatment and recovery and staying sober.
But you can do that without putting in somebody who several years during a St. Patrick's Day celebration on Fox and Friends weekend, support staff set up a display of beers for a holiday segment on the show, and after the segment aired, Hegseth walked by the display table and drank every single beer, including according to two former colleagues who witnessed the incident. This isn't the place for him to fix that in this job.
Right, and it's really a stressful job. And I think